What's up, Ragin Nation? This is Alex. You're watching the Ragin Ronin review. In this video, I will be reviewing Resident Evil Retribution. Resident Evil Retribution is the 5th installment in the ongoing Resident Evil franchise that's based off the video game of the same name. This one is directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, just like the last one and the first one. The Resident Evil movies have always been average to suck. They aren't really that great movies at all, but they make just enough money for them to warrant a sequel. And that's no different with this one, because the last one made almost $300 million worldwide. Anyways, this one is not that much different from the rest of them. However, it's no longer about making new discoveries. This one is just about getting away from a zombie-infested environment. The previous one was more or less the same, but they're making new discoveries. Well, in this one, it's just a big rescue mission and just getting away from all the zombies and just trying to survive. Like I said before, just like the video games, it is survival horror. The formula of this movie is really not that much different from the other movies. They're really just introducing more monsters and zombies and other types of monsters that were in the video game in this movie. There always got to be some kind of boss character at the end of the movie that they have to fight. But before that, it's just fighting more zombie minions. And there's a lot of martial arts fighting and a lot of gunplay. But other than introducing some more vicious monsters, there's really nothing that new and refreshing about the movie. In the last 4 movies, really nothing has changed that much except for the setting. In the first one, it takes place in the underground hive. In the second one, it takes place in the city. In the third one, it takes place in the desert. In the fourth one, they go back to an even more zombie-infested city. In this one, they're in the Umbrella Corporation's simulated playground. And that is actually the one thing I found very interesting about this movie. I think this one is almost on par with the first one. The first one was decent because it was the first movie that introduced us to the concept before the sequel started getting really repetitive. But this one I felt was more in line with the first one because there was more of the presence of the Red Queen character. And in some ways they're going back to the hive because of where they are, which is the Umbrella Corporation's simulated playground. And honestly speaking, I think that is the best thing that is going for this 5th installment of the franchise. And another minor thing that I thought was kind of interesting was that they brought back characters that were killed off in the first movie. And that I thought was kind of cool because not only did that remind us of the first one, but it also gets us wondering why they're back. So that's kind of a new revelation in the story. But other than that, the formula for these movies is all the same. There's a lot of gun battles, but the gun battles, in my opinion, are not very interesting. And to be completely honest, I've seen Alice do martial arts again and again and again in every single movie, and none of it is really that much different. There is definitely a lot more action in Resident Evil Retribution compared to Resident Evil Afterlife. I found that this movie is more action than sci-fi action horror because there's not a whole lot of jump scares, or at least I found that there are not a whole lot of jump scares, but it really strayed away from the zombie horror subgenre. The end fight sequence at the end was pretty decent. One of the sequences that stood out to me was when our heroes were being chased by this giant dog monster thing with brains exposed. That was pretty decent, except that the CG was still kind of subpar. I found that the CG monsters in all of the Resident Evil movies has always been on the same level, and that is subpar. You know that our heroes are being chased by a CG monster. But you know what? This is the Resident Evil franchise, and if you followed the franchise, you just accept it. That sequence was decent. And then you have the end fight sequence, which was also pretty cool. But like I said before, these movies are made up with nothing but gun battles and martial arts fighting. And really, there's nothing that much new to it. The only thing that they can do to make the movie different is change up the story, but they really can't do that much about it. And I think the 6th installment is going to be not that much different. And the last thing I want to mention is that the filmmakers are trying too hard to make this movie faithful to the video game, and that is through the costumes. You have a character named Ada Wong, and throughout the entire movie she's wearing a red Chinese dress. But I'm just thinking, how is running around fighting zombies in a Chinese dress practical? And later on, there's a scene where they're fighting in the Arctic, and she's just lying in the snow, and I'm just thinking the whole time, is she gonna be okay? I mean, she should be catching hypothermia anytime now, right? And scenes like that just make me feel that this movie is just a bit ridiculous. But what do you expect? It's a Paul W.S. Anderson directed Resident Evil movie, and by now, if you don't already know that these movies are just a tad ridiculous, well, You shouldn't expect anything less than that. I gave the last one, Resident Evil Afterlife, a 4 out of 10. I'm gonna give Resident Evil Retribution a 5 out of 10. It's almost on par with the first one, but not quite there. And that's all I have to say in this review. There is going to be a 6th installment, and Paul W.S. Anderson mentioned that the 6th installment should be the last installment. Because if you watch Resident Evil Retribution, you know that the last scene in the movie teases that there's only one last thing to do. And that's all I have to say. If you enjoyed this movie review, hit that like button. If you want to see more movie news and reviews, hit that subscribe button. If you want to chat about movies and have a little bit of discussion and debate about movies, like me on Facebook, The Ragin Nation, and we can chat about movies over there. And if you want to see some exclusive Ragin Nation Twitter content, follow me on Twitter at Ragin Nation. My name is Alex Yu, and thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace. And carrying this giant hammer battle axe kind of thing. And the crazy part is that I don't know where he came from. There's no explanation for him at all. He's just some random guy.